Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Tasmina, for both that really nice introduction and for this. I know you and the team behind you have worked really hard with support from many people I know to bring this audience, this group, this people who are keen to make things happen together. And that's always hard work, so well done. And you grabbed me as well because I wanted to be here. And forgive me, I'm coming straight in and I will be leaving a little bit after I've spoken. But I hope to engage on a more progressive nature with all of you because what we're talking about today, and I know you've discussed a lot about digital assets today, and I think AI and various other things, these are not sort of siloed conversations. This is how the world is going to work going forward. And basically, we all have to play our part in that. We have to play our part in that from the countries we come from, the cultures that we carry, the relationships we have, the politics we do. This is all going to be defined now by this next age of technology. And I sincerely believe that because despite my title and being a peer and all of that kind of stuff, I'm still getting sort of used to that. I spent nearly all my life, working life, almost 30 years, in industry, in delivering public services, in working with technology. So that is the frame and the context that I look at this through. And what do I did want to pick a topic. Kind of Tasmina was like, free reign, say what you want to say. And I was like, that's a really bad thing to do. But the word I think, and everyone says, what is 2026 going to be about? Everyone has to come up with some pithy kind of line about what's the buzzword and everything else. Well, AI's gone and, digital assets is gone. But I don't think actually it's just about this year. It is about those things, but it's actually those things converging. That's the really interesting bit. I think you may have covered it a bit today, but for more than a decade, we've been sort of gradually building up a conversation, I'll say about digital assets first, as well as artificial intelligence. And these two things have been kind of running separately. I've been really lucky in life in many ways, but in this way, I've been involved in technology, and I was involved in AI and wrote my first paper about it in 2017. But digital assets, or when we decode that into something like e-money that it originally was, I was very fortunate to be involved in that about 25 years ago. And that was with the delivery of something called, for those who are Londoners and have been in London for a while, the Oyster card. If anyone know what the Oyster card is? It doesn't really exist anymore in reality. It's on your phone or it's on a credit card. But the Oyster card was the first contactless e-money platform. Only one other city in the world had it before London, that was Hong Kong. And we launched in 2003, and I spent 3 years working on that. Oh, there's one right there. Oh, unique, well done. So what did that bring? Before that, it was simply pay some money, get a paper ticket, put it in a machine, come out. If you bothered to pay for the ticket, by the way, because we had a gateless system in London, which effectively meant you could walk in and out of the metro system. And also, you'd have to buy a separate ticket to go on the metro, a separate ticket to go on the bus, a separate ticket to go on the DLR, whatever it was. So contactless technology and the infrastructure behind it brought us seamless transport, multimodal journeys. That was and don't get me started on that because I could talk for an hour on just multimodal journeys. I'm sure you're all really interested. That's a whole different world of transport. But it also brought us the world of e-money, although that was a total accident. What did we originally want to do with the Oyster card? We wanted to replicate the ticket. So if you bought a daily ticket, you'd put a daily ticket on your card. If you bought a weekly, a monthly, an annual. By the way, you talk to anyone under 30 nowadays and you say, would you buy a weekly ticket? They look at you blankly. What does that mean? Nobody would do that. But that's what we were doing, replicating old formats on new technology. And then somebody thought, well, how about if we just had a little bit of money on there, so in case your ticket ran out, you could just dip into that pot of money. And that was the beginning of the idea of carrying a digital wallet, e-money, on a card that you could use as and when you choose to. So that was 22, 23 years ago. But in the last 10 years, what we've seen is real transformation in the world of digital finance. We've seen the stories, and I'm sure you're all aware of how we've seen a technology like blockchain be used to act as a security measure, a safety measure, an ability to ensure value can transfer from one place to another, and you started developing cryptocurrencies. We moved into the world of stable coins. We've moved into the world of central bank digital currencies, not quite yet, but all these things are floating around, tokenization. But what does that mean when you bring these things together with AI? Well, personally, I believe we're entering the world of AI commerce. And let me expand on that a little. Because when you speak to government about technology, they're always really focused on how can it fix this one problem I have over here, or one issue over there. It's very fragmented, it's very siloed. When you talk to industry, when industry is developing innovation, two things it wants to do. First thing, it wants to sell it, right? So it really wants to sell that innovation. So it goes and speaks to customers about what they want. The second thing it does is look at use cases. How does that technology actually become used in different environments? And that's where you start seeing, yes, AI being used as we now see it at this era of large language models. Take your pick, Gemini, Grok. Grok's sort of out of favor at the moment in the UK. But also, you know, our favorite ChatGPT. All of these things are first generational sort of usage of AI. But the actual usage is when you start to expand AI technology with a use case like e-money. And that's where, and I'm sure people have seen agentic AI emerging. Agentic AI, where you've got bots that are AI supercharged, now delivering services for you. So you'll ask it, right, well, today I'd like to do X, Y, and Z, or even just look at my calendar. I have to travel from A to B, maybe later on C to D, maybe a hotel room somewhere. And you'll start having these AI agents doing that work for you. And I use that particular use case as one example, because when you're doing those things, and we've all done it on Google, show me how I can get from A to B, Google Maps, PC. But how about showing me getting the best value, finding the right kind of location and maybe hotel that I want to stay at, or a nice place I'd like to eat, make that booking for me, make the payment, get me best value. Now, for that to happen, you're starting to move into an area, well, do I have to now link my AI agent to my account, to my credit card, to my bank to make the payment? How will all that work? And that starts to get really complex. And you throw that all away, and you start getting a combination of AI with digital money, and you get, does anyone know of GibberChat? GibberChat is where agentic AI is talking to agentic AI. Now, I'm going to really date some people here. I'll date myself. Did anybody ever have a computer in their youth which had a tape recorder that you played to load up? You say, oh, you can't nod. You're not that old.
77, remember?
A Commodore 64 is what I had, if anyone remembers it. But you used to have a tape recorder to load the programs, like a normal cassette tape. If you played that, you would hear these funny noises coming from it, screechy kind of noises. That is GibberChat. That's programming talking almost. And what we're entering now is where that GibberChat starts to happen between agents who do what you want them to do for you. They will make the decision around where, when, time, money. Obviously, there'll be activation points for you, which you can program in on making those decisions. But you start entering a world where all that stuff gets taken off your table and it gets done automatically. AI commerce, the beginning of AI commerce, the very early stages of AI commerce. But why do I say, with a relative amount of confidence, that this is absolutely going to happen? Because all the big companies are already building their AI commerce platforms. If you look at some of the biggest retailers in the world, we all know the names of Amazon and others, online retailers even. But even people like JD.com in China and others, if you speak to them about what they're building right now, they are building their future commerce models utilizing either crypto or stablecoin platforms to trade. So that's the world we're going to. But that's sort of the near future or the now. How come we're not discussing this en masse? How come we're not talking about it every day? Why is it that we seem to be stuck in a conversation, and I do think it's an important conversation, around threats online, yes, deep fakes, all the bad actors that we see? Why don't we see also those positive conversations? Because we have the challenge of regulation and policy. What is happening to enable even that world of AI commerce that I'm talking about be on the side of the consumer? Make sure that despite these huge behemoth organizations hurtling down the road and building those platforms, where is it that they are thinking about the rights and how they'll manage the relationship, the trust, the confidence, the transparency for the consumer? Because it all sounds really good. I sell it really well, right? When I worked in industry. But how will I know I'm genuinely getting best value when it makes that decision on where to make the booking? How will I know the right payment will go? Do I have to go through all these transactions to make sure that I trust it, that it works for me? And that's where we really are in a generational shift of how do we look at regulation and policy around these areas. We're currently looking at very much through a lens of AI and digital assets, but how will we look at it when convergence happens? How will AI commerce policy emerge and develop? That is a really big question for all of us. Because, by the way, it's not restricted by a geography. It's not restricted by a city. It's not even restricted by a continent. These are global platforms. The whole point of things like crypto and stablecoins is that they are borderless. They can be moved and they transact and they work technically, yes, they do more efficiently, but faster and with less friction. So we don't want to build that in through individual regulatory models all over the place. Maybe Europe does something different, the US does something different, UAE, India, et cetera, et cetera. We can build a really complex pattern of regulatory frameworks that starts bringing more friction in because they'll kind of defeat the purpose. But we do have to start looking at interoperability, what is one place developing with another, where is the end vision? And what I thoroughly propose is that we look at a vision for AI commerce regulation. How do we want it to work? Because we're going to be doing these transactions, we're going to be wanting to do it. And we're not going to want to have to, sorry, you're now entering another zone, so you're going to have to click I agree to another set of terms and conditions that will then say, well, are you sure? And then another set and another set for each level of jurisdiction you're going through. But we may end up there if we don't think about it differently. And I think that's a big ask for leaders, policymakers, governments, regulators across the world to think about. I know there's going to be a big collection of people on this topic in Davos in about a week's time, right, Lisa? This, I believe, should be one of those topics that's center stage around how AI commerce will develop over the next year, 2, 3 years, because it's that kind of period of time we're looking as the models are already developing. So, a great opportunity for policymakers to really think about how they want this to shape. A great opportunity to talk to industry that's already building their platforms. And a great opportunity for us to feed in early about what we want to see, which is the citizen, the individual, feel that they can trust and understand what is going on. Now, I've spoken a lot about the future, and I started with the past. I'll go right back to the past. I love that I was fortunate enough to work on this thing called the Oyster card. By the way, it's called something, it was called New Ticketing Media in the contract. Really sexy name for it, right? That's a New Ticketing Media card. But when we were developing, I actually wrote part of the customer proposition of how that card would work. What is the most important thing about new technology? It works. Secondly, it's adopted. Now, these two things, any technology, are the things that have to happen. We find a lot of times there's a promise of new technology and it doesn't work, doesn't get adopted. New technology works, we fail on adoption. Why? Because we don't address the things that really affect people. We don't communicate it properly, we don't support change, and we don't make people feel they own it, it's for them. With the Oyster card, we somehow did it right. And I say this because you don't always know exactly what you got right till you look at it. But we realized this was going to be such a significant change. We're the first city in the Western world to adopt this kind of technology. We spent a year developing cultural change programs to help the initial integration of that platform. What do I mean by that? We let the platform run in parallel, just in the background, for a year without people actually using it. They could see it, they could ask questions about it, but they weren't using it in anger. They weren't sort of, because, let's be honest, people get scared, especially when it's that significant a change. We put more information than you could ever have, make it available to people when they were using the system. So Even now, if you go through a gate line, some that still have a screen up there, it'll put up a code or a number in terms of what's happened when you've done your transaction, maybe even the value. How many people have that extra split second to stop at a gate line at a London metro station to say, let me just see what's going on there? Nobody. If you stopped for a second, another 10 people would be already pushing you through that barrier, right? But we put that information up because we wanted to message that if you want to know, just look at the screen and you'll know what's going on. But it's elements like that of providing more information, things that might not even be the right thing to do at that point, but to provide reassurance, to build in trust. Because then when it went on to people saying, now I just tap and go, I don't even look at it, and I'm told I get best value, you do get best value because the algorithm works, there's so much trust and integrity into the Oyster system, you don't even question it. Now that took a lot of effort and time to get to that point, but that's a marker, and that's the kind of success that's required when we move into another generational shift into AI commerce. All that work around agentic AI, all those large language models, all those things around cryptocurrencies, all that technology, it won't mean anything to a lot of people because we don't all understand that, and we don't have to. But what we do have to have is trust and confidence that the system works best for us. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for all of us who are policymakers as well as regulators and leaders in our own jurisdictions to make sure that the consumer, the citizen, feels confidence when this technology is brought in. So with that, hopefully optimistic note, I want to say thank you again to Tasmin and the team. There's a lot for us to deal with. I think the amount of change this is going to bring has to be owned by communities, by individuals, by the citizen to make it a real success. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, is there anyone?
Yeah, well, do you want to take questions?
Yeah, why don't I? That's a bit like just walking out. It seems a bit rude.
May I just say, just for your information, Lord Ranger, we are in amongst us in case they want to ask the questions first. We have many former heads of state that I wanted to make you aware of. The former Prime Minister of Belgium, Yves Le Terme, is here. The President is former President of Estonia, the former Prime Minister of Lebanon, former Prime Minister of Palestine here to my left, former Chair of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the former President of the Republic of Macedonia. So I wonder if there were to be questions, if we would just take them from any of these heads of state first to allow you time to depart, which I know you need to do. So if there are any questions from any of our most senior guests here, please feel free to ask Lord Ranger before he takes any questions beyond that.
I'll probably say Estonia's probably ahead of everyone. Is it? Where's the
there he is, yes.
You're an original digital nation with the adoption of technology very early on. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Could you possibly, thanks. I'll just get the mic taken
Sure.
over. Thank you, Stefan. I'll let you say one question.
Sure.
You didn't really mention central bank digital currencies. I mean, I don't know, what is the state of play with the Bank of England and in issuing a digital currency? Because I will say, I will talk about later on, but when you see the kinds of severe threats posed by the United States government sanctioning people, so we have ICC court judges who can't even use Visa or MasterCard anymore. And then I don't know how bad they were for the UK citizens who were doing disinformation research. But you're locked out of the system. Christine Lagarde said, well, we should go over to a central bank digital currency, but nothing's moved on that. I don't know why. I just want to know how the Bank of England is thinking about these things, because it is a threat, a really serious threat to our financial system and the security of our citizens.
Look, I completely agree with you that there's a threat there. I couldn't give you an answer on behalf of the Bank of England, that you'll have to ask them, but I think the Bank of England has definitely been on a journey. I think it was very much focused on CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. Its governor has been shifting through the proclamations that he's made publicly over the last sort of 6-7 months about more of an understanding around digital assets and cryptocurrencies as well, but particularly around stablecoins. I'm hoping some of that might be due to some interventions some of us may have made, like asking in Parliament about the government's strategy on stablecoins. I was the first person to raise that question in the House of Lords chamber because you could see industry adopting these things. But you're right about the potential risk around, and there's a dollarization risk around currency usage, as well as about how usage could be restricted, throttled, and used in certain other ways. I think we need to explore that more. We need to look at how do we ensure that all that control doesn't sit in one place. And I think that's why I also say, in Davos and other places where we get global leaders together, let's really debate, not just the opportunity, but the element of ensuring it's open to everyone, and that not just one jurisdiction takes overall control.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.